Uh, Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you for the kind introduction. So, a very welcome and good afternoon to all the participants. Uh, I hope it is just before lunch session, and I can feel how you will be feeling. But I will start in a very interesting way, and will try my best to give you a view of not much details of but a view of a new approach, which I have said as, which I am defining as, and which people have defined as a cognitive computing approach, and that is to the data analytics part. So, cognitive computing approach to basically data analytics, but I have my topic goes on like multimedia analysis, content analysis, and then application design. So these two things, are rather three terms: multimedia content, the second is the application design, and the third concept, cognitive approach, will be there in my talk. Just to introduce, before sharing my screen, why did I took this? I'm seeing that many of the participants are still joining, so I'm taking 2-3 minutes in telling you that why this topic, why this is so important. And in the last few months, in many of my lectures on online lectures, I am trying to deliver in the last few months are basically related to this cognitive approach, this cognitive computing approach. And one of the reasons for that is, I will tell you one interesting story. So I asked my students, new MTech students, that for going for a particular specialization, whom do you ask? Whom do you consult? If you want to take admission in an engineering college or some institute or a university, that what should be the specialization you choose ahead? So do you ever ask your parents about that? And I found that 98% of the people said that no. We do not rather tell anything to our parents. First of all, because we are grown up, okay, that's good. But secondly, because they will not know much about the new topics and the new courses which are being introduced in many of the universities. So they will like to call their friends, their seniors, or the other seniors, or a particular teacher or faculty member who are already working in that area, and so on. So this story tells you one thing, that experience is good, and our parents, we assume that have a lot of experience, but we do not go for them for everything. For some of the things we may go to them, and for some of the other things we do not go to them. So experience is not context free. Experience cannot be repeated in a domain where things are not known, in a new field. This is the problem of machine learning. We give data, or the past data, of course, and we want to know about the future. Now, if future is a repetition of the past, then what is the problem? And everybody knows what will be there in the future. But future is future and never repeats the past. So future will always be new, and we can analyze only the past data. So the main crux of the whole problem of the machine learning, of any learning, of the human learning, is that study old data, past data, study the experiments which you have already done, derive some knowledge, apply it in a new field. That is what is the new application design. Application design has to be new application. The learning has to be done from the past data. So exactly you cannot repeat the past. Whatever knowledge you have got from the past, you cannot exactly apply in the same way as we have done earlier. So this is the main thing about the cognitive approach. So you have to derive knowledge, not information. and then apply this knowledge in a new domain or area or a new topic or new algorithm, etc. etc. That is what my whole content will be about my talk. If anyone has any question, please ask me, or any interest or any comment, so that I can now start sharing my screen. Any participant, if you have any comment to do, please do it now. Any participant? No question? Yeah. Is it fine? Visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, so this is my topic, multimedia content analysis and application development. Basically, I will talk about the history of AI, and of course, I'm not going to talk about the history of the whole AI, but how the AI has emerged to present day deep learning, and a lot of questions are asked on deep learning also. I will again tell you one story about this deep learning. There is now a paper, and rather a debate in the Harvard University Technical Review Journal, which is talking about the US justice system giving bail. So there is a software introduced in US, which is, I mean, although there are many other open source softwares which the justice system can take, any judge can take help from. But this was proprietary software called COMPAS. So COMPAS is being used for finding out what is the risk if the particular person gets a bail. So they talk about what is the score or what is the risk, so that they will be again arrested if they are on bail. So if they are free on bail, then that person will again be arrested for this, what is the score. And therefore that software COMPAS talks about this score. So people have, many of the people or rather victims have said openly that this taking help from this software is not correct, and we do not know what actually it is doing, because the source is not open. So it is a totally opaque system, and therefore we should know what this does. So therefore they have, forced the proprietor of the software COMPAS to tell us more detail about the program which is involved, because the program was more based on the deep learning case. So they showed that, okay, the training data and their fields to be taken has to be told, and we should know how it learns. Initially, there were a lot of resistance to this. The software said, no, we will not tell you. The judge was telling, I do not know what it is doing. What I have done is that I have given this input to this software, and this has given a score. For the same charges, there was another person whose score was different, and therefore they are not given the bail. So the judge refused to say that why this person was given bail and why this person was not given bail, saying that it was the software which gave a particular score. The software company not telling that why this gave this score to this person and this score to that person. because they said, I do not know, it is a machine learning method. And then the whole debate started. And therefore, there are other kind of softwares which were used for bail systems earlier. One was Coral, and other was the Expert system. All of them are being compared. Their software proprietary persons were called. They have to write, the debate into the journal, and this is published. And I have that copy of that. And then I started reading into this. What it was found is that the initial, when the teaching take place, it gave all the data of the previous journals who were convicted of which charges and what they have done, etc., their age and their color and their gender. All this data, when they are given, the software was giving a result that black people should not get bail. Now they found that if my software works like this, then this will not be accepted. So what they did is that they made this in the database, the color was there, the color of the person, but they did not feed it to the training data manually, and therefore the computer stopped giving this one. Then it was given that if someone is male or bisexual, then it should not be given bail. Otherwise, you can give bail. So the gender part also, they made it optional in the training data, so that the system learns in a different way. However, there was a dominant factor which was considered by this is the age. So if someone is less than 18 years old, then there was one rule. If between 18 to 20, there another rule, and then 20 and more, 20 to 22, and then more than 22, and previous history, that how many number of times that person is convicted. Based on that, the whole output was given. It was giving it. The user did not want that only these three factors should be considered, but because of the weight assignment, it has become something like that these three factors have become only dominant, and based on that, it was giving this one, and that started the whole debate. So saying that we use a machine learning to represent whatever it is giving is not a correct method, number one. Number two, to accept it by the people, so that they can point out what are the problems, what are the contradictions in that learned system. People should know about it, but the problem is that nobody knows it. Neither the person who made the program, neither those persons who are using the output, nor those persons who are doing the training, etc. Nobody knows anything. So that kind of black box model is, first of all, not acceptable in deep learning. And this is not me saying, although I am trying to say this since last 4 or 5 years. But now people have realized this, and therefore, there are a lot of, 2 years back only, there was a total in CI, IEEE Transactions on Computational Intelligence magazine. There was full-fledged one month's volume for that, and 1 month a magazine for that, which is talked about explainable AI. So people said that, okay, whatever the output you get from the machine learning, basically deep learning methods, you must explain why this is so, and that you can explain in different things. I will talk a bit about this thing in my whole lecture. So therefore, an existence of explainable AI came into existence, and after that, there is further discussions on that explainable AI is not sufficient. We must have something which is called as the interpretable AI. So from deep learning to explainable AI, and from explainable AI to interpretable AI, and now from interpretable AI, the whole system and all the people and technological development is awaiting what I call as the cognitive AI or cognitive computing. So these are the stages which will be there in the next few years. This is my assumption. But the things have already come from, the simple black box model of deep learning is no more usable. No one accepts that. People have come to explainable AI and interpretable AI. But still that also are now saturated. People are trying in many ways, coming up with different architectures, doing LSTM, stack of deep learning, stack of CNN and LSTM, autoencoders, transfer learning, zero-shot learning, and so on and so forth. Multiplying the data, trying to do many other things, multiple modes, multiple information systems, fusing them together. Large number of experiments are being done, and there are no sufficient answers to these challenges. So therefore, I think that not only we should talk about big data, and big data is what or data analytics, simple, because independent of domain, you cannot talk about data. Data requires to be in a particular domain. What do you want to do it? Say, for example, as I told you, that if you want a system, an application for giving the bail, then you may not have to give the data of color. Where from this wisdom will come, and who will get this wisdom? So therefore, the human being has to intervene. Whatever data you get, you feed it to the system, you will get garbage. So therefore, you have to first plan it out. What is for? What is the application doing? Based on that, what are the factors which should be considered? There are many psychological and other experiments requires to be done before really designing an application. So that is what is the whole crux of, the whole summary of the talk I am going to give. Again, if anyone has any question or any comment, please tell me in a half minute. Because I will like that, you think more rather than copying anything or doing anything. This is more a theoretical talk rather than very specific details about any one algorithm or any one thing. If anyone has anything to say, please tell me in next 15 seconds. Well, as there are no questions, so let me talk about this. Let me just wait for 15 seconds. I will say, do you have any comment?
No comment, sir.
Good. So see here, this is now when we are studying AI, and I was studying AI in, let us say, somewhere in 80s. I did my BTech in 78 to 83. So during those periods, some people were talking of AI, not many. After when I joined research in 84, then of course people have started something about computer-aided design and using some artificial intelligence, expert systems like that. During that time, what we are saying is that this is a toy problem. So toy problem is very, very important. And you can see here what this boy is doing, Silpa. So Silpa is a SILP assistant. SILP is the name of our lab here at IIITA, Speech, Image and Language Processing Lab, we call it. And the assistant, which is a dialogue manager. So that dialogue manager, we can ask questions like Google Glass or many other things. So we have created this SILP assistant, and asking questions like what this boy is doing, Silpa. Now this is the answer given. He is solving the navigation problem for an autonomous vehicle on a complex route. This is his topic of research project. This student's project is finding out or solving the navigation problem on autonomous vehicle on a complex route. And what that person is doing, see here, that is the vehicle he has got and the route he has got, a clean table where it can move without any crossing. There are no crossings, there are no signals, there are nothing, etc., etc. And they will, based on some data, so they may synthesize data that what is the speed, what is what is the length, what is the road, etc., etc., without taking any clue from any of the crossings in let us say Allahabad. So the complex route in Allahabad. So you have many of the crossings, and take 4 crossings at the same time, because if there will be a rush on one crossing, many of the vehicles go back and then turn to the other road. And then there will be a jam on the other crossing. And from there will be the third crossing. And something happens in one area, people will get the information and then they will try to get another route. This is the real life problem. And this is the toy problem. Of course, there is no problem in trying to understand the toy problem and then trying to solve it and then think about the real complex problem, because that is the way in which we go in science. You take simpler problem and then try to make it more and more complex. This is not the problem. Problem is what? The problem is the assumption that the same algorithm which works on this autonomous vehicle which this boy is seeing, which has no crossings and which has no complexity of a real life crossings and navigation and the vehicles. And there are not only autonomous vehicles, there are other vehicles. There are cycles and there are bullock carts. And there are slow speed things and there are high speed things. There are 20 bullock carts ahead and a car behind it. Now, how they will cross each other? These are the real life problems. So trying to see that our same algorithm, which we have applied on toy problem, will scale it up. If we increase the processing speed and we increase the amount of memory available, then the same algorithm can be applied on a very complex thing. This is the assumption. So any toy problem, either you solve an 8 pins problem or 16 pins problem or 20 pins problem or Tower of Hanoi problem. This is the complex search, or heuristic search in AI which we study. We apply A star algorithm and other algorithms. And there are hundreds and thousands of such algorithms which are available. Apply that on a bigger scale, do boosting and bagging and so on and so forth, and we assume that it will work. This is a completely false. This is completely wrong. Anything developed on a toy problem will not scale to a bigger scale. And that we have seen many times. And to give you an example, very simple, we have been doing this from many of my PhD students have done then write thesis onto this. So multi-object tracking is a very simple problem. It looks like so single object tracking. If you see the first row of the figures. So you have a person walking on the road, and then suppose you have an image of a person without that person. So you just subtract that. So sometimes this person will enter into this frame, and as soon as we go on walking, you take different frames. So you can see here that is the frame in the B, first row of the B part, middle one. And there is no other object. So you just subtract this from this one. So what you will get is C. It looks so simple. And then we have made many algorithms. Unfortunately, even this, whatever is seen in the C, you will find out there is a shadow. And a computer cannot make a difference between that person standing on the road as well as the shadow, because both of them, during the process of binarization, making it 0 or 1, both has become same. So the movement of that. So now if you take the center of gravity of this image, white image on the right hand side of the C, the center of image, shifts to maybe a below, maybe a different one, and therefore sometimes it can give a wrong thing because the shadow changes the direction as we go on. So as we go on ahead, depending on where the light source is, and especially in the night times, the light source is always changing from one pole to the other pole, and therefore the change in the shadow becomes very, very fast. So what we have found out that even for single purpose person, where the background remains completely static, there is no change during the video framing, there is no other person in the frame, there is no moving car in the frame. Assuming all these things, this also does not give you correct result because you cannot make a difference between them and shadow. And if you add one more person or few more persons to this, so you come to the problem in the below column row. So in that you can see there are 3-4 persons. So there are 3-4 persons here in the B part, middle part, and what is not shown here is this one. See this white one. What is this? Now, if you see that where from this is coming, and on the one hand, you see these are the spots which are the false positive in that sense, and these are the spots which were really a white one, which is not there into this, and therefore the confusion of this stand, this camera stand, and this pole, etc., and etc. has gone. But a new kind of, which you can call them as noise, has appeared. Now, a human being will always see this one and say that what is this? This is bad thing, and we should not look into this. Now, think about a computer, a system. This is also white things one, and they are doing clustering of suppose, and the clustering is not done based on the physical nearness. They are done anywhere in this one. So, if the value is white, then it is a part of the cluster, and therefore this is a part of this cluster. So represented by any structures, it will become a forest, but they will remain. Some of the points will remain. And this may change from frame to frame. That is what the advantage, because this has come because of the change. These values are changing. And they are basically this is we call this as noise. So therefore, this noise will start taking part. What we did is that if you go to if you see that this third part on the bottom row, so here what we have done is that taken the real image and converted into wavelet frame. Now in the wavelet frame, what we have seen is that this shadow part has become a very different one. Rather all the connections between them. So some of the Y component is strong here, but in the shadow it is not strong. So based on the Y component, if we filter it, I mean the Y component is basically here the imaginary component I'm talking about. So we have taken a complex wavelet transform. So in the complex wavelet transform, you have some real component, some imaginary component. Based on this only, you can completely remove this. Now, if you start arguing that you can get from this image directly, and because if you give, let us say 1,000 images created like this, then from that you will get this. I am not ready to accept this argument. So just by multiplying many numbers, you cannot create a complex wavelet transform. So therefore, what the machine will do? What the machine will learn? If the machine can learn that instead of going into the time domain or spatial domain, let us go into the wavelet domain, which is a mix of both frequency as well as time, rather both the time frequency analysis, as we do in spectrograms and other things. So time frequency analysis, if you want to do both at the same time, then you apply wavelet transform in the real practice, and we really represent our problem from the spatial domain to wavelet domain, and then do the analysis, then apply the algorithm. Assuming that this will be automatically done by the system, I'm not able to understand how it will be done. In some cases, it will do wavelet transform. In some cases, it will not do wavelet transform. How can it happen? It cannot happen. How the machine will know that now I should apply this one and then I should apply this one? You say that, okay, you guide the system like that. So if I guide the system like finding out the wavelet transform, then without wavelet transform, it will never apply. So all the problems of wavelet transform will come back. So that is what I am trying to say, that take the real life problem, like simple multi-object tracking, and this is to be very simple ones. And there are thousands of algorithms which have been developed both in spatial domain and machine learning based method. And many of the machine learning methods are working. I'm not saying that they are not working, but in cases where the shadow will become an important part, in cases where your assumptions will not hold, will start giving errors. And the errors are so harsh, so critical, that one Google Bridgeometer gave a result that the weather is fine. And there were a lot of fire in California, and people are seeing that their car is getting fly ash. And then the Google is saying that this is very fine. The weather is very fine. There will be no rain. There is nothing like this one, because it has no data about the fire. So because there is no data about the fire, and therefore it says that it is the weather is fine. And there was no data. There was data about clouds and all that, but the fire was there, and it cannot say that there is fire. So therefore, in normal cases, there will not be any error. But as soon as that error will be there and it is used, it is unknown. It was not known earlier. So that is what happens in it. So you have an autonomous vehicle going with a deep learning network, and at once there is an accident, and there is no data about accident, what it should do while there is an accident, or where something jumps in front of it. In a normal training case, nobody jumps in front of the car. So an expert driver will do something, to save the life of the person who has jumped, also to save the life of the person who is there in the car. It will do something by its presence of mind, by its innovative idea, by its creative idea. But a software who has not been trained into this will not do anything. And that is again, if I come back to the original debate in this one, so in the US justice system, and in the same bail justice systems, in the law it is written that some of the external factors will be considered by the concerned judge, and based on that judge will give bail or not give the bail. So an external factor. And then these professors, basically Harvard professors, have started asking this question to the judge, that how this software will be able to apply these external factors. And what are those external factors? It says that if you feel that the person has done something wrong because of mistake, because of something not known to him or her, or because someone is in a situation, were hungry for 5 days and gone for a small theft, or in the rash of the moment has bitten someone. So in such case, you see it as an external factors, and therefore give bail. Or if you think that the person can be curable, don't send him or her in jail, but give them the opportunity to transform. So these are the external factors has to be considered. These are the new factors. These are the new situations. Most of our creative work, the intelligent work, which what a human being does, are in a situation which is unknown earlier. And then this machine learning algorithm says that you don't have data. So you don't have data because of the paucity of data, this machine cannot learn. So therefore, what you do is multiply data. And one of my students in a project saying that what you have done, sir, I have taken the image and do the flip. So by theta angle, and then change the values of this one, and then gave it as another data. I say, what it is, which extra information you have got? Take the whole data, multiply data, combination of all data, and take another, again, PCA. You will go back to the real data. So if PCA can reduce the multiplied data to the original one, it means that there is a correlation between the new generated data and the old data. What does it mean? It means there is no new information. If there is no new information in the multiplied data, then why the machine will learn new things? Machine will not learn any new thing. So that is what people have started doing. Take the data and multiply it, repeat it, do it 20 times. What is it? Until unless you change the conditions of data generating process. What is that data generating process? That you do experiments. So do experiment in the day, in the night, put your camera from different angle, see the different situations. Sometimes the storm is there. Sometimes some car is moving in the background. This is the way in which you can multiply the data, by giving new informations, new things, new situations, not by multiplying the data by 2, or 3 or 1.5 or by some cos theta. So that is what is the things which we have to see. So real life problems, when you apply really finding out the solutions for this, then you will understand where is the complexity. So this is one very important part. If anyone feels that he or she should ask some questions, please do it. The second example I will give you this one, and actually this is a very old example I'm using in my talks, but there is a challenge. First, let me talk about this. So this is Stephen Hawking. He's a very famous. He was a very famous physicist, and then here he has a lot of problems. So he basically his brain has a problem which we call as the motor neurons has a almost a kind of fracture, you can assume, and because of that, what he has to do is that there was a screen in front of him, and then wherever he looks at, so wherever the eyes has a gauge, and based on the camera, that was not because of eye tracker. Eye tracker was not there at that time. We have now eye tracker in our lab. So wherever one sees, the camera knows that where someone is seeing, and based on that, you can that part of the things will be highlighted. And of course, because the camera cannot confirm it that that person is seeing that, he cannot move hand a lot here and there. So if the fingers can move or you blink your eyes, then camera can understand, okay, you are seeing at this point. So whatever at that point is available, that will either open or do something or speak something like that. That is what was done, what was called as the assistive technology. And these days, a lot of work is being done in the multimodal mode, and especially these assistants. So they have now online psychiatric dialogue systems. So finding out the depression. So if you see that there is a challenge called AVAX, and there are a lot of challenges. So in that 1 year, that challenge was basically for the depression and autism people. Autism people cannot communicate well. They forget some of the terms. They cannot speak those terms. They cannot communicate with the others in a normal manner, where the majority people, the way they communicate. So for all the autism people and most of the depression people will show this kind of things. Will stop speaking to somebody else. Will have difficulty in communications, the stress on the words, and so on and so forth. So therefore, there is a data there kept there in the challenge, and students are given challenge to solve it. You can find it out. Now it is available, and a lot of journals has come up onto that, applying those algorithms. So assistive technology or finding out the depression and other mental diseases, and mental diseases are not one disease. Please don't think it about as a one disease. There are a large number of mental diseases, and one should not directly go into a disease part. I always say my student, work on the healthy people, enhance. So technology is an enhancing technology. Assistive technology can enhance our learning, can enhance our anxieties, can make us more happier, can increase the wellness of the society, of a healthy people. So all this technology, assistive technology, especially when we talk about this Google Glass or other things, other technologies are assistive technology in the sense that they help us in doing something. So in that way, all these technologies are being used by collecting information about the way the human functions. And that is what is very, very important. So these are the assistive technologies which are being done, and not only in this case, but there are many such impairments, speech impairments, increasing the speech devices, many of the, synthetic eye, the external eye part, and also the external ears, even some of the middle ear functions have been already, created artificially. So you can have now completely eye, which can be like two cameras, and they can put onto the real human brain. So there are some experiments which have been done at MIT lab in the lab of artificial intelligence where they have, to a completely blind person, they have put a synthetic eye, synthetic retina and camera, etc., and the person starts seeing it. Of course, for all the blind persons, they cannot do it because they think that some development in the brain might have taken place earlier. Otherwise, starting from the very scratch and then developing those structures in the brain is impossible. So if the brain has already developed some things, some structures, then if you give input of visual things into the brain, then that part of the brain can become activated again. So there are many such experiments which have been done, even in the University of Southern California. People have done a lot on the prosthetic eye and many other things. You have already, prosthetic hands and legs, and people are now participating in Paralympics, and India has done better there. So a lot of technologies has developed, even for differently abled persons, and can do. And those things can be used for us also, for the so-called healthy people also, because if you want to jump 10 feet, of course, with your physical leg, you cannot do it. But we can have a technology where you can, by 10 feet, we can jump 20 feet, 15 feet. What is harm into that? So with the help of technology, we can see the stars like it is in my room. So using telescope is not bad. So similarly, I can jump many feet based on some technology, some physical technology, and they can be well added towards to the joints of my legs and hands, etc., etc. So I can do many things. I can enhance my body capabilities by adding technology to it. So therefore, these words and impairments and etc., please do not. So therefore, we can go on enhancing ourselves, our capabilities with the use of such this assistive technologies. With that, one more thing let me talk about, that we require information not only in one domain but multiple domains. Just 1 minute, please. Yeah, good. So therefore, what we require is that we require information from different sources, So when a human being thinks, when I am thinking, then we require knowledge. And knowledge is not one domain knowledge. And that is where, I started talking about that. You say that it is a domain from this, I have derived from this experiment. So you do one experiment, like I told you that for multi-tracking, multiple person tracking, you collect some data. That's great. But if you think that human being only uses that information or that knowledge for recognizing the human being, no, it is not. The face recognition develops from the very childhood. The way the people walk, we know about that. So even by closing my eyes, I cannot say that within 1 second person has walked 500 feet. That I know. And anybody saying that this is the image I have got, they will say it is a fake image. No. So where from I have got that the limitations of human walking? Human walks, so he stands on the leg and then walks, cannot walk on the on hands. The human beings will be live to walk, will not be ill. These are all the knowledge which are associated knowledge, which may not be used for a particular problem at the particular time, but we know about human beings. This is called what is called knowledge. This has not been derived from the data which is available in the video. So information has multiple sources, and the knowledge has multiple sources. And so much so that up to our whole lifelong, an expert becomes expert after, let us say, after 30 years. For the whole 30 years, we go on learning. And not only few seconds or few days or few months. People study, go to classroom in schools, in high schools, in colleges, and so on and so forth. And then after experience of 30 years, university has become university. So my learning is not based on that video of 1 hour. My learning and knowledge is based on my whole life. Even that much time a deep learner does not learn. And I have more than 100 billion neurons. And many of the circuits and many of the written books I have read. And whatever is written in that books has been learned by that person, author, in maybe in another 30 years. And when he was writing books, he read some of the other people's who have again learned for another 30 years. So see here how the knowledge propagates one from the another. The whole mankind or humankind has got now knowledge. And that piece of knowledge is there in the books, in the journals, in the papers, in the things, etc., etc. That is the knowledge which a human being has. Even if I don't have some knowledge or you don't have some knowledge, you will go and read one paper and get some knowledge. Then apply, create a new algorithm, write one new thesis. So the kind of view people have created that a machine is given one data of 1565 gigabyte and there is such a huge data set human being cannot handle. I say, what a foolish you are. Human being has got the whole mankind of thousands of years of knowledge. We have accumulated it. We can go and ask on search on the net today. Even if my personal mind does not know, the world knows it. So solving a real life problem based on the very small part of knowledge the machine has is not bad. But let us emphasize the limited things, the limits of that. Now, my only viewpoint here is to emphasize the limitations of that. We should recognize that, okay, this is a thing which has been learned based on this, and therefore applicable only in this situation. We should be very clear about that. We should not start creating, we have created a human brain. No, and it is now the artificial neural network. And therefore it is a neuron. Or we have used long short-term memory called LSTM. So it has become like a human being. And then start giving that Sophia robot a citizenship of Saudi Arabia. You know about that. Now, Saudi Arabia, there is one robot called Sophia who has got the citizenship of Saudi Arabia. And now that Sophia wants a child. So this was the news. Sophia wants a child. What does it mean? That it wants, there is another robot which will be called as the child of Sophia, should also get citizenship of Saudi Arabia. And she has given an application for that. So Sophia wants a child. Now, should we give it or not? You can do whatever you want, but don't compare it with the human citizens. That is my point of view. This works very differently and in different one. So again, the source of knowledge is not just a one collection of data. Whatever size of that may be, how much the complexity it can have, this is beyond the capacity of human knowledge. And human knowledge does not resides only in our brain. It resides on the internet. It resides in the papers and research going on, in the books and journals the libraries have, etc., etc. So the whole knowledge is there and they are accessible. Of course, every one person will not have all the knowledge, but they can access it, or they can buy it, or they can hire one another person who will have that knowledge. So we can hire an expert. A computer should also do that, hire an expert if they cannot solve the problem. So that is, so it has multiple source, a combined one, and developing. So the old knowledge and the new knowledge has to be such a way that it is ever growing. So that part of I call this as homogeneity. The homogeneity or conformity or whatever you can call is the integrability of the all knowledge into one complete knowledge is what is beautiful. a machine learns one thing. So I develop one system and you develop another system. Now, you cannot develop a system which will start at a starting point where my system has finished. Whereas I do not rewrite the whole book. When I read one book on computer vision, we assume that whatever is written there is true. We start from there. If you always start from, or we say that if you always begin from beginning, you will only reach few hundred meters, and then you have to restart from the beginning, and you will always again reach a few hundred meters. So how can you go beyond few hundred meters if you always begin from beginning? So there should be a system where you begin, or the machine begins, goes up to one step, one system can goes up to, let us say, few hundred meters. The second machine should start from few hundred meters and go few more hundred meters, few thousand meters. And then the third machine should go from there, start from there and go ahead. So if such a communicable knowledge is there, then of course one can proceed ahead and ahead. But if every time you start from the beginning, then you reach at some point, and that may be very good, and that may be very good compared to the where from it has started. But in the long run, you will reach at only some small distance. So that is the problem of the machine learning methods. So let us analyze this. So multiple source, multiple situations. When we talk about multimedia content, people think that, while I'm speaking, my video is taken. So if you record my video and audio at the present moment, and you say, this is a multimedia we have got, sir. I said, no, what is this? This is fine, good, that during when I am seeing and when I am speaking, so if you take my information from the speaking, talk about the sentiment analysis of the speech, and then take my photograph, and you are already taking my video, suppose, and then from the video, you got those sentiments, they will match, of course, they are synchronized. But human being does not work only on the synchronized data. As I told you that I know about human being from my childhood. So the multimedia domain data may not be created at the same time in the same environment. The factors may be different. So I may be walking in the campus, that is one scenario, and I may be walking on a busy road, that is another scenario. One information from one domain or one situation, some of the things can be used in the other situation and some of the things cannot be used. So when you derive knowledge, you have to make a difference between that it is a general kind of knowledge which can be applied into other situations, or it is a specific knowledge which cannot be applied to others. So therefore, there are various layers of knowledge. There are various factors which has given rise to that knowledge. When we talk about the knowledge application, apply your knowledge. So what you have studied up to 30 years, now you will apply after 30 years. And none of the situation is generally exactly same as the previous one. So don't apply the knowledge to create the same old situation, whatever you have seen in your childhood. Nobody will like that old situation to be created. So applying knowledge is a kind of applying some part of the knowledge, some abstract part of the knowledge, and that's why we go for abstraction, a generalization. But generalized knowledge cannot be used directly. That generalized knowledge has to be applied in real life. So human being walks like this has to be applied that someone is walking on the road or a field or a track, then what will be the speed? So speed calculation will not be based on only the past knowledge. There are some information from the past knowledge which will be applied into new situations, and a new situation, a new value will be created. So this talks about both the generality. You have to generalize it, make an abstraction of the things, and apply in a new situation, create a new one. It is something like this. Again, I give it to the students. If anyone has any question, please ask. So I gave this example that, when I'm teaching you, I'm speaking some words and you are listening to it, And when suppose in some exam or quiz or test or evaluation, I give some questions, then you are not supposed to use the same words which I have spoken. So you have learned about the things. Now, if I say that what you have learned, you may not have learned my language. What you have learned is the content, and this content is again very, very important. So you learn the content of my speech. You don't learn my speech. The content of my speech, which I am talking of as a multimedia content. So multimedia data will have a content, and what is this content has to be defined. Take those content, rewrite into your own words based on how much time you have. So you can write one line, one sentence, you can write one paragraph, you can write a whole essay. And then when you write an essay, then you may have to add many details which I have never spoken about, which you have got from the other situations, or it is in your imagination. Yes? Anybody? Am I audible and visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So I found some noise there. So therefore, when you rewrite this, you add your details and you add your things. So that is what I'm trying to say is that we learn some content. We can call this is in some way meaning, but meaning is more abstract and comes from literature. I call about the content, call it as content. People understand content. It is not memorizing. It is not just keeping in somewhere in a reservoir all those words one by one and in the same sentence, or just trying to find out the probability between the words. You understand?
తిన్నా ఇక రాత్రి తినలేదు నేను ఏమీ తినలేదు అట్లే అంటున్నా
Someone is speaking in
కూడా మర్చిపోయాను ఐ మీన్ రాత్రి కొంచెం అన్నది తింటుండే అంటే టైట్
Abhishek, is there any question?
Sir, I have muted the button. Sir, I think by mistake the mic is on from someone, so we will handle that.
No, I thought some question is being asked. Okay, so therefore, as we can see here, that some content has to be understood and some analysis has to be done. So therefore, this is the first thing which I have there in my topic, multimedia content analysis. This is the first part of my topic. Multimedia means there will be multiple sources of information or data which has been created through different kinds of data generating process. I call this data generating process is the experiment setup or the environment. So if for visual tracking, the data generation process is the situations, the things, and the type of camera used, the number of frames you have taken, the angle from which you have put, etc., and the environment one has created, daytime, nighttime, etc. So all these are different setups, different situations in which the data can be created, and they may not be same. If you create a data only in one go, in one experiment in a lab, then that will remain valid within that environment. Change the environment factors, your things may change. Your algorithm may not be applied, may be applied, may not be applied. So that we have to do, but human beings does all the things and integrate accordingly. It knows that, okay, if it was taken at the daytime, the night time, the colors may not be actual. The colors may be wrong, which are visible. So daytime colors and nighttime colors cannot be directly compared in terms of RGB, and that is also true for camera. The intensities are different. So therefore people will not apply the daytime things into the nighttime things automatically. So instead of limiting our problem itself, or instead of limiting our data itself, you only select you create all the data, keep it in your brain separately, use whatever is useful, relevant at the moment. So that is what the human brain works like. So content understanding, or multimedia or multi-source data is there. And one of the important source, let me just add here, that one of the important source of knowledge is the language. And that's why most of the new AI methods have started talking about the language also. Rather, there is one stream in AI which is called as the working with words or computing with words, CWW. So you can search with CWW. So working in words and the converting numbers into words and words into numbers. Our operators can be word operator. So on the words it can apply. So finding out the distance between the meaning. Combine a words and create a sentence, generate a sentence. So data summarization can be done in the form of not a table, but writing a paragraph about the sentence. So data summarization is there, and so on and so forth. Or the result of the video tracking can be that there was a person who looked like this was found on the platform here at this time. So this can be the output of a learned system. Instead of saying that, okay, this is the video and see the video, instead of that, or giving some symbols or some kind of alert, you can totally write a sentence. It can describe like a human being. So if it knows the natural language processing, it gets knowledge from the natural language as well as it gives output in the natural language. The advantage of giving output to the natural language is that a human being will understand that. And if a system is also able to understand natural language, then that other system will use that knowledge into its own form. So communicating knowledge from one machine to the other machine, to the third machine, to the fourth machine can be done through natural language. And sometimes the human being can also intervene. Human being will also speak in natural language, and therefore they can contribute to the knowledge. They will understand also, and they can contribute also. So I can write, okay, no, you are wrong. It is not like this. Actually, the things happen like this. If I tell this computer in natural language, so that it will use that knowledge into its own algorithm. So working in natural language is a very important part of content understanding. Rather, people have now given this theory that our brain thinks in a language, and therefore a computer cannot think without a language, without a natural language. In computational language is very, very restricted. It is context free. Any context free language cannot learn more than whatever is given present in the input. So that way, this is one of the theories, and this is one of the important things, that the language generated explicit knowledge is important for machine learning and for human consumption both. So this is the first part in the real life problems, that content, human being understands the content. And what is this understanding is a different thing, So these days, rather nowadays in AI and especially in the data science and other deep learning and other methods, now the words used are understanding rather than processing. So natural language understanding is a separate subject now being taught. And I have proposed one subject on course on cognitive computing, and which should be called as natural language understanding rather than natural language processing. Similarly, image processing should be called as image understanding. And this is a totally different thing. Now you have to take into the theories and the knowledge involved in processing through an application, applying it. So understanding give rise to application of the knowledge, whereas processing is a very neutral and general term. Anything you do, multiply, add, and subtract can become a processing. So this is just not a change of the words, but it has a different approach and different meaning to that. So understanding the content and doing analysis into that. So understanding and analysis are the two different things. So when we talk about data analytics or something like that, now I do not know that it is understanding is involved or not. Why I'm saying they are different? Because the understanding will give rise to knowledge. So when you understand something, a data, you get some knowledge and create a reservoir of knowledge, which will be independent than the particular application. The current application, I may not use that knowledge, but all of you are doing some projects, all the students are doing some projects, which you will never use in the future. But then why all of you are doing project? because the output of that is what we call as a learning output. So these learning outputs are not applications, direct applications. These are the knowledge, pieces of knowledge. You will create the reservoir of knowledge, which will be used in future. Many times you learn while learning by doing. So when you are working as a teacher or as a faculty member, as a researcher, as a person in the industry, you do something and then also you learn. You enhance your knowledge reservoir. So there are two outputs. One is the particular decision, particular thing, particular action which you are doing. That will give a result to something, that will modify something to something. So input will change to output. And output can be a product, a physical product. But together with that, there is one more output which is enhancing our knowledge. So understanding necessarily enhances our knowledge. Of course, what we have got is a negative knowledge and etc. as a caution, something like that. But in general, we will say that it is a add to the knowledge. And after doing analysis, you can find out the way so that you can get a new product kind of thing, some physical output. So that is what you have to do, the output. For that, you may have to do some analysis, but you have to do understanding if you really want to do the further the enhancement of the knowledge. So human gets knowledge. That is also one of the very important part of this. Let me go a bit faster. So the second part of that multimedia content and analysis is that here it is understanding. So understanding is gonna. Then after understanding and you want to solve a problem, so what do you do? What our brain does? Before solving the problem, we make a plan. So I want to go and buy something, suppose a dress. So therefore, what I will do is that I'm sitting at a room. I have not gone to any shop. And then we will think about what should I buy? What will be the cost approximately? How much money should I carry? Or that much money is there in my card or not? Or credit card can do will it exceed by that limit or not? What other things I have to buy today? So if I have to give money to somebody else, and that much money is not there, so I may not postpone this one. So before buying, you have to plan. And this plan is a kind of proposal that in this way I will solve my problem. Suppose I have a bit less money. I want to buy a shirt and then there is some other work I have to do. I have money only for doing that work and for that, but I am going today civil lines. So I want to buy my shirt also today only. So I will borrow a money from some let us say from somebody. So this is a solution, proposed solution. Before solving the real problem, you first propose a solution in advance. That is what a brain is for. Otherwise, you don't use brain, just go and go into the way the people go for shopping. They do not plan anything. So they have enough money. They will take that money, or there are enough, pay back things, etc., or some watchers. Just go into a place, into a shop, and whatever you find out and buy that. That is a separate thing. There also at the moment you have to compare two things and buy one thing, etc., etc. So that is the work of the human mind or brain, is that first plan and then work. Rather, working is done by the body itself. Once you plan that I will go like this, reach civil lines. So then you will start go like this, unless there is a change in the plan, brain may not think again. So the thinking part has already been done earlier, fixed the plan and kept it into that. Now the brain is doing coding and send that code to the hands and legs, so that you go into the car and drive it and reach at somewhere, park it and do this. All these programs has already been created. And then there is a simple execution of those programs during the buying process. But what is important here is that how the human being has planned. So when I am solving a problem, there is no problem today. But we are assuming many of the things and creating a proposal for solutions. And then we will validate that. If it is a research program, it's a thesis program, you will find out the topic, You will find out the details of that, which methodology you will use, what are its problems, what it will give rise to, what are the advantages. Still, the advantages are not there. We have not done it anything. But you will say that, okay, as per this paper, these can be the advantages of this. So you have some hypothesis. So evaluate based on those hypotheses the best solution. So you have a proposal before solving, and the machine learning thing should also solve problems like this. It should create a proposal first, then evaluate it, rather than simply saying that this is the solution. This is the, sorry. So then you have to evaluate those proposals. So whatever the proposals are there. So if you have 3 proposals that we do in the decision making, so you have 3 paths. So path 1, path 2, and path 3. You create a utility function in the game playing, let us say, and say that if I take this path, this will be a minimum distance path or maximum profit path, or maximum some value will be maximum. So maximum information gain or whatever the quantity you fix about. So evaluate that proposal, and then only you can decide. Then the third part is, as I told you, the fourth part is that once you have a knowledge and you want to generate, like writing your real answer, then you use some of the information which I have spoken and add some of the specific things you have. So I may not have spoken about something you know from other sources, and then you want to write a total essay onto that, onto multimedia content analysis, then you add some of your points. So this is called as a specific information. So you have a general solutions, add the details, get the specific information, maybe from different sources. So this will be called as, so particular things and global things. And there are several levels of global and particular, or local and global, whatever you can make it, call it. You want to call it, you can call it. So that different layers of details can go on adding one by one. So you may have one network which gives you the general knowledge and the general proposal output. You have some other sources, add information to that. Again, from other sources, add information to that. And in that way, you can create the knowledge. Like we do in GAN. GAN has only one level as such. You can go on adding many things from at the level of the output of the GAN. Or you may have many networks, one concatenated after the another, and go on adding the things. And this kind of creating a stack of CNN or deep learners or autoencoders and LSTM and CNN, etc., etc. All these things are being done, and a lot of evaluations are taking place. If anyone has any question, please ask. So this is the total summary. Get knowledge, that is understanding, predict a solution, evaluate the proposal, and add some specific information. These are the steps. If we are doing, I call this as cognitive computing. So anyone has any question? Anything, any comment? Even if you have comment in Telugu, please tell me in English. Yes, good. So some of the cognitive approach, let me take some things which we are doing at our lab. And with that, my talk will be complete. So this is the knowing. And knowing is a very separate task. You'll see here, if you want to know about triple IT, see those lectures. And I say that this is understanding. So you can see the different pictures, and if I create a deep learning machine out of these pictures, I can tell you it will never come up with any information. But these are the different aspects of this triple ITA. Of course, it is not complete, but and of course this cannot be during the COVID days. So these are the before COVID days. So this tells you something about your life, campus life, as we call it. And if you want to go to any other foreign universities, they will always tell you on their websites how is the campus life, what normal students do. And there are many students who pass out students who write on such websites, and you can read those things and know about how is the campus life. And this is the learning life. This is the learning environment. So campus life is a very important ingredient of your, of your, which will be part of your life. But for selecting one institute, the campus life is as important as any other things. The importance of getting a job and or getting knowledge or getting a good situation, etc., etc. Campus life is one of the questions which many of the foreign students ask first. Then they go for which subject they want to study, etc., etc. This is my lab. So that is the life in my lab, SILP lab. So these are the passed out students and so on and so forth. So this is the objective learning and things as we go on from data, that is either from experience or experiment data. You have to take the knowledge, and from knowledge we talk about, this data, experience, experiment has to be understood by a method called content analysis. Then this is the history. I'm not going into history of all that. These are many of the algorithms all of you must have heard and done. What I'm just trying to say is that don't throw one knowledge in favor of other knowledge. So some of the people in my class say that, what is the use of now studying about, let us say, in explicit knowledge structures, we talk about FrameNet. So FrameNet, semantic net, script, these are some of the knowledge structures or conceptual graph which earlier people have talked about. I'm glad that now complex networks has come as a new model where you talk about social network and etc., etc. And a lot of information you get from the personal, emails or chats and webbots and so on and so forth, and which you can get in the terms of dialogues, and then you can put it onto a complex network. So can create a social network based on the complex network, and the nodes are some concepts, and the distance between the two nodes is based on some concept of neighborhood. So if the two people talk together and the frequency is very high of that, so this can be one of the measure of the distance or neighborhood. Some things can be connected by, let us say, they belong to the same domain, or these words are, suppose, emotion words, and one word is occurring together with the other word again and again, being used in the literature sentences again and again. So they become nearer to each other. So some neighborhood concept itself is not a fixed one. It may not be only a Euclidean distance in the physical terms. It can be based on the information, the part, the similarity, the dissimilarity, part of the same game, taking the same approach, and so on and so forth. There can be many, many factors. And people have studied many such factors which can be taken in different applications. So those things are very, very important, and keep them as an explicit structure. So you can develop ontologies and use this knowledge into deep learning network. So you have multiple sources of knowledge. One is the physically created, expert-made, human-made, etc., etc., or you call this as handcrafted, whatever you can call it. Don't throw it out. That machine will learn everything. Let the machine also learn. Let the human also put their own knowledge, whatever he can. See how they can be used in an advantageous manner. This is one which is very, very important. So I will still go for that. You must learn all these methods, the vector space model, many other graphical and mathematical models, many other graph theories, so feature vector analysis, matrix factorizations, stochastic gradient research, Laplacians of gradients, or rather Laplacian networks, and so on and so forth, Laplacian matrices, and so on, semantic nets, and similarly probabilistic, like HMM, Bayesian net, and many more things. Although the new concepts like LSTM has developed, and it can feed to these methods, the method of finding out the probability. We can still use Bayesian net. So you must learn about these things. I will say that even specifically you can learn by the machines and keep it there, and then use it in the together with the machine learning. And many of the problems may not need machine learning. If we can do it directly, it is better to solve directly, because now you will know what the machine is doing. Only those problems which cannot be done by these methods should be also attempted by machine learning methods. So therefore, there is a balance between the use of the two. There is a combination of the two. There are hybrid methods, and that's what we talk about in the cognitive computing. We should go for hybrid methods and models rather than either use expert systems or symbolic methods or use machine learning methods, and one throws the knowledge of the other. This is not a correct approach. So we have, and I know that when I came to IIIT, especially in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, every student wanted to know about soft computing. And what was soft computing? It was neuro, fuzzy, genetic, probabilistic computing. So we have to mix about neural network, fuzzy computing or fuzzy logic, and then genetic methods, and also some probabilistic methods like like PSO or ANT optimization, and many other probability-based optimization methods. So mix all of them and it becomes a soft computing. So everyone was studying soft computing before this deep learning came. Now deep learning came, everyone thinks that now the soft computing is forgotten. I say that fuzzy network, and especially we are working on type 2 fuzzy network. Fuzzy networks are the very best method of transfer learning. You do not require any data. You can just, go from one domain to the other domain, transfer the learning in a different one by changing the values of parameters, almost subjectively. And many times it works fine. So therefore, you have to try about fuzzy and genetic methods even today so that our machine learns better. So these are the models which has to be learned. We have done some work. I will give you a small details of, I cannot talk about every other things, although the talk was only 90 minutes and 30 minutes was question answers. I will take 5-10 minutes. So this is the deep learning network. What we have done is that we have used this expression profile, because human expression is very important. And then you see that expression is not simply to see the happy or neutral or anger on the face. Expressions have many ways of, one is composed of, balanced, one is nervous. And so for taking the interview part, we have collected a lot of data, our own. We have taken some other data. We have taken the face data also, and we have taken the speech data. I can tell you that many times the speech speaks better than the face. So please take out that, take the speech data, record the speech, and see how one speaks. What are the words used? If someone speaks many times half sentences, then it reveals that person's understanding. If someone is using some words which are very, written text like, and in some other expression, one starts speaking some other words. So if these two types of expressions, two times of expressions are very different words using, then you think that maybe sometimes it has mugged up the word. So while answering a question, one will start using some words which are very technical, and as soon as you ask a question which is not technical, it starts using very different kind of words. So this can be done. This can be recognized that person has only for that question answering has mugged up some of the terms and do not understand those terms. So therefore, these kinds of things are there in the linguistics. So our students who are working on psycholinguistics, who has to analyze speech, has to also work on psycholinguistics. And we have done a lot of work into these directions. I'm not going into details of all that. Then we have one machine called EEG machines, and EEG machines are something like this. So where are the EEG machines? Oh, no, it is not. So we have some EEG machines in which there are electrodes which can be put onto our head. And then you can see here, we can talk about many of the questions and job skills, etc., etc. So these are some of the factors and their structures. And these information has not come from machine. It has come from other psycholinguistic experiments which people have done. And these are very important to know and to understand. So when I am saying that you have to derive information from the language, you have to see those experiments which have been done from the language. So very recently, one of my students have done PhD on psycholinguistic measurements, and we talked about L2 language learning. L2 language is the second language. So we have a primary language, which is a vernacular language, which is generally our mother tongue. And then we have a second language. Most of the Indian students have English as a second language. So second language learning is very different from the first language learning. And then many of the psycholinguistic features which we can measure and we can find out, and for which we can do also experiments, has to be taken from those psycholinguistic literature. So those features are divided into this one. We have also worked on emotional intelligence, and this emotional intelligence, so the personality is divided into 5 personality traits. There is a book called Big 5 Personality Traits, and which are generally taught in psychology. So you can take up those big 5 traits, and then you will find out that they are divided into basic personality tendencies, knowledge and skills, and so on and so forth, many more things. So based on these factors, you have to analyze. So this knowledge cannot be obtained directly from the data. We have to create another structure or probability transition matrix so that this can be worked as a prior knowledge. Like in Bayesian, you have 2 probabilities multiplied. One is the specific in a given situation, and other is the general kind of things, which we can represent by many a priori knowledge. So you can have 2 structures. One is getting the a priori knowledge, other is getting the specific knowledge, and those multiplication of probability is only one method. You can do many more things. Many way of combining these 2 is another way. So you can create a utility function, or a cost function, or some error function, or some loss functions, etc., etc. And creating those loss functions differently will train the algorithm or the structure in different ways. So this is the way in which I am saying that the knowledge, a priori knowledge, which is obtained from the literature and other things from the language, in other ways, may be computed by the human beings, can be transferred to the machine. And there should be also vice versa. So whatever the outcome of the machine can also be used for changing our, let us say, transition matrices. And that is the way the Bayesian network works. When you do experiments, very high number of times, it gives up to a particular distribution when n tends to infinity. So that is the way in which it works. We have this MIT interview data sets and IIIT data set I was talking about. And we have also worked on imagined signals. Imagined signals you can catch from the electrode, that is the EEG signal. So this is an emotive. We have a big 128 channel EEG machines. So when someone sees a video, this EEG electrodes can capture the voltages on the head like this. So you can point out like this, and these are differently numbers. Take the values from this, and this is a very complex time series. So if you have 128 channels, you can think about 128 mode of or series of data, channels of data is coming as a time series. Trying to analyze that is a huge problem, and it is a big problem. So a lot of things have been done onto that. In this, what we have done is that these are some of the states. So in these states, we have first trained the machine from the EEG data, and then again apply the new unknown EEG data so that it will say that, okay, one of these states it belongs to. So that is what we call. So when you think that I should move my right hand, then this thinking is done there in our brain, And while the brain has thought about this, you can capture the EEG signal before moving my hand. That things in the EEG signal can be captured. And therefore, for creating a prosthetic hand like this, what you can do is that a person who has, who has got artificial limb, let us say artificial hand, will think that I should move my right hand, and then this thinking will be captured by that machine, that is the electrode. It can go to a machine learning algorithm or a real artificial neural network in hardware, and that will compute the positions of the fingers and hands and all the joints. So you can have several axes of freedom, and then based on that, several angles and distances has to be computed, and that can be done automatically. That can be learned by machine learning methods like a deep learning method, and then it creates the positions. It gives you the values, and therefore many of the motors which are there in the fingers and the hands, joints, etc., they will move by those values, and therefore the hand will reach the particular place. So the hand movement from a particular place to the another place, catching something, and this has been done in the robots also, or in the robots also you have to generate such kind of signals like EEG. But for a real human being, you can capture those imagined signals from the head, and then you can translate that into the positions, and then the motors can execute so that the hand will reach at the particular place in the particular position. So these things have been done in a small manner in our lab also, and this has been tried on a particular person, and we have got these things. So there are many more things. There are very interesting experiments we are doing on emotion analysis, in words, in language. We have an eye tracker, and so on and so forth. All of this cannot be presented here. So you can see here some of our publications in this NeuroImage. It is a good paper. Then you can see here our advanced, this one, which is an EEG-based biometric identification. And then you can see this paper, recent papers, IEEE ACM transactions, where we have talked about Hindi dialogue restaurant search corpus. So we have created one corpus. LDRS is now available online. So Hindi corpus, it is basically for Hindi dialogue. So these are the things, and we have also created one more data on EEG emotion analysis, which we call as the DENS. That is still in the archive. So that way a lot of data is there, and I will again tell all the faculty members present here that please collect your own data, put it onto the website, let the people work and add to that. In Indian context, the data is very less. We do not create our own data. We only work on the data provided on the websites. Unfortunately, many of the information is not there. So any Hindi information cannot be there in another language data set. So such kind of things we should create. Data creation is very important part of machine learning and other methods. So with this, let me summarize the whole thing. What I'm saying is that the information cannot be in single a type of environment. So you require multimedia, multimodal, multi-domain, and so on, so many multi-data, including the information in natural language. Take all the information, put it into a machine form, in form of structures, ontologies, neural networks, LSTM, HMM, whatever way you can. Create a dictionary and references to that. Use them whenever is needed. Create new proposals through machine and have new data, apply onto that, and this process should continue. So this is the whole thing about multimedia content analysis and application design and having a cognitive approach. What does it mean? It means that is you must have a knowledge creation together with the application creation, and that reservoir of knowledge is more useful, is very important, and must be in a form so that it can be communicated transmitted from one machine to other machine, from one machine to other person, from person to machine, and so on and so forth. So in this way, I see that future of AI will lie into cognitive computing methods. You may not call it cognitive computing, but the interpretable AI, which is at present there, will take up many steps which are at present called as cognitive computing.